Coming up.
Well, like I said, I think you have to have rules and boundaries and things like that. And then after that, it's just about chipping away at it.
Music insight.
Well, I think I would like to maybe streamline it a bit more. So at the moment we do 2 to 3 releases a month. I'm wondering if I should try to streamline a bit more and do maybe 1 or 2.
Why this musician, DJ, and chief operator of Shore Dive Records is the best in the business. That is right around the corner of Surprise Cast. I had the great fortune to speak with the highly intelligent and thoughtful musician out of England. He goes by the name of Nico Beatastic. He's a force of musical nature who seems to have his pulse on the creative button at all times. Oh yeah, he doesn't skip a beat. Find out why. Here he is, Mr. Shore Dive Records himself, Nico Wardell. How are you?
I'm okay.
Could you tell the listeners where you are podcasting from?
Sure. I'm in Brighton, England.
Hey, do you mind if I throw a little icebreaker questions your way?
Go on, then.
All right, here we go. Nico, if you were to be Prime Minister or President of the United States one day, what would you like to change or see happen as far as policy goes?
How long do you have? There are plenty of laws in place. It would be nice to apply them. Like, for example, if say one of the rules is that your president is not allowed to be a criminal, it would be nice if your president was not a criminal. You know, it's just a law that is easy to apply. Sorry, man, you don't qualify.
Wouldn't that remove a lot of candidates?
Possibly, but that's a good thing, isn't it? Surely you want to narrow it down.
I like that answer. Let's do another one. People have often talked about writing a book. If you were to write a book for a release of 2025, what would you title that book and why?
That's a good question, because you need to know if you're going to be looking at the positive or looking at the negative. I would say 2025, The Walking Dead. Yeah, I don't know. I have a very strange fascination with zombie apocalypse.
Why?
I don't know. To the point that wherever I go, if I go to a new place, usually at some point I look around and think, would this be a good place for us to survive a zombie apocalypse? I mean, you need water, you need somewhere to grow food, you need to be able to have some kind of sight of what's, in front of you. You need some kind of walls, I guess, or something like that. I mean, it sounds easy, but it's not.
No, and I think for me, the hardest part about surviving the apocalypse would be who to trust.
Oh, yeah.
Third and final icebreaker question. When I see an image of you, a person comes to mind. His name is Clint Mansell.
Okay.
He's from the band Pop'll Eat Itself.
Yeah.
He's also a film composer.
Yeah.
Have you ever been compared to a celebrity? And if who?
John Wick.
Hey.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Keanu Reeves?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I think it's because I have a big, long, like, leather jacket that, I don't know, it's a bit Matrix as well. But yeah, also, I think it's also because I have sort of like, longish hair and facial hair, Also, Sporticus. It's Sporticus from the cartoon. I can't remember what it's called. Not the cartoon.
Oh, no.
The children's show. I can't remember what it's called. But there's a guy called Sporticus, and he's the evil guy. He's got like a mustache like that. And I've been compared to him for some reason. I don't see it, but yeah.
I have some work to do. Check this out. All right, Nico, let's retrace our steps, shall we? Tell the listeners and me, where did you grow up? And number two, what I also really want to know is some very impactful childhood memories that still linger today.
So I grew up in France by the airport in Paris, the south one. So there's two airports. There's one in the north, one in the south. And I grew up by the airport in the south. So because it was right next to the airport, there's the town, there's my house, and there's a field, and then there's the airport. So I grew up with a field in front of my house. So it felt like being in the countryside, but I'm actually 20 minutes drive from Paris. And this is some, I'm obsessed with finding out why, right? And that could be why about anything. But one of the things is, why do we like the music that we like? Right? And I have always wondered if I like shoegaze or music that has some kind of fuzziness to it because I live by the airport. So therefore there was always like a hum in the background,
Yes.
And I wonder if it's related. And obviously I will never know the answer. I have a friend though who did a master's in music, and his thesis was about vibrations, right? And so basically the idea is that we like things because the vibration of that thing matches our vibration. And whereas, when you talk about someone, you say, I don't like their vibe.
Yes.
You actually mean you don't like their vibe. You don't, they sort of give off, because everything vibrates, right? So they give off a kind of vibration that isn't compatible with yours.
Tell us about the relationship you had with your parents.
It was good, actually. My parents my dad's English, my mum's French. So I guess whenever I went to England, I was the French kid. And whenever I was in France, I was the English kid. So I guess in that sense, you never really fit anywhere. You're always caught between two worlds, even though let's face it, I consider myself French because that's the culture I grew up in, really. But yeah, I would say that there's that element of not really fitting anywhere because you're always half this and half that.
Yes. And with that hybrid of identity, did that impact you growing up as far as being a student?
Not really. I was a pretty decent student. I think my school reports were always able but lazy, which I think sounds about right. It was not that I was lazy. It's just I wasn't particularly interested,
Yeah.
I didn't dislike it at all. It was fine. Something to do, but yeah.
Were you bored?
At school? Not really. A bit. I don't even remember, to be honest. I remember not hating it.
Yeah.
Which is better than most people, I guess.
So when did you make the move from Paris over to Brighton?
When I was 23.
Okay. So I'm assuming you got into music much more before 23
Yes.
years old. So tell the listeners kind of the seeds of that experience.
I can actually pinpoint it to one particular event. It's crystal clear in my memory, and I remember all the feelings attached to it. So in France, at that time, in terms of radio, there was not really that many radios about. Right? Cable was not really a thing. Mm-hmm. So the only access you had to music was really the radio, and the radio was pretty much pop music and very little else.
Yeah.
And one day, I remember hearing John Bon Jovi, Blaze of Glory, on the radio. Right? And I was like, what is this? Right? Because I'd never heard anything with some kind of like slightly country-ish guitars. Yeah. Like I'd never heard country music in my life at that point. And I was like, what is this, and why are they playing it? And I was fascinated. I was like, I don't understand. Like, and then it sort of gets slightly heavier in the middle, and I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? I'd never heard anything like that. So I remembered the name, and I went to my library, my local library.
Yep.
And at the library, they have records that you could borrow. So they have CDs, they had vinyl, they had tapes. So I went there and I looked for that John Bon Jovi thing, which I couldn't find. But I found Bon Jovi, New Jersey. And I was like, okay. I took it home. It was a vinyl. I didn't have a vinyl player. But I took it home and I was like, I have it. I must find a way to listen to it. And I knew that my neighbor was like, she had a daughter who was roughly about the same age as me. And I thought she might have a vinyl player. So I went to knock on the door. I said, I'm really, really sorry, but do you have a vinyl player? And she said, yes. I said, well, is there any chance I could borrow it? And she said, no, it's too big. You can't. And I was like, any chance I could use it? And she said, well, my daughter's not here yet. Here, you can have it for like, I don't know, an hour or so. And I was like, okay. So I went to my neighbor's daughter's bedroom. She wasn't there. And I just put the thing on. I don't know why, but I started with a B-side, probably because I didn't really know anything. I put the B-side on and it started playing and I started sweating.
Oh my goodness.
Like, profusely sweating. Like, I felt like I was doing something dangerous and different, right? And from that point on, I sort of went to the library and, I was like, well, I like this Bon Jovi thing, even though for me it sounded like Slayer or something. It was like, proper heavy, because I'd never heard anything like that before. So I started, thinking, well, what else is within that realm? So I started listening to Guns N' Roses and, Motley Crue and, those kind of things. And then I remember Nirvana happened.
Yep.
And so that got me into like a different side of rock music, basically. And then I remember listening to, Teenage Fan Club. Oh, yeah. Because it was, I think they were touring with Nirvana at the time. And I was like, okay, well, if they're touring with them, they must be good. And they must be sort of like similar kind of music. And it wasn't similar, but it had that kind of like fuzziness, but it also had the harmonies and the melodies, and it was just gorgeous. And so that got me hooked onto like more like alternative music.
So let me get this straight. You go from Bad Medicine to What You Do to Me, Teenage Fan Club.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty unique range, right?
Yeah, but at the same time I was listening to Pantera and Soundgarden.
Yeah.
I don't know, The Prodigy, and there's quite a lot of, music's like food, isn't it? It's like, maybe you love chocolate and it's your favorite thing in the world, but sometimes you fancy a salad.
Right. Now, your head must have exploded in terms of, again, absorbing all this style of music. Did you have friends that you could side with at the time going, hey, check this out, or they would share music with you?
Yeah, so I had a network of one person because everyone else didn't listen to rock music. It was just like pop music, So I had one friend who, and somebody said to me, do you know Eric? And I was like, yes. And I had the memory of this guy who, when we were at school, would go around and open people's bags behind their back. That was his thing. He was very childish. And I was like, yes, I know him. And he said, well, he's really into Metallica. I think you guys should you guys should talk. And I was like, okay. So I went to his place and then we started trading things. So, you tried tapes and CDs and stuff like that. So between me and him and the library, we managed to get quite a lot of things. And I started meeting other people, like, through like going to like a different school or something like that. And then you meet someone and somebody says, oh, you should speak to them, And then that way you sort of build a little bit of network, and which leads me to, I met this guy who was slightly older than us, and we went to his place, and he would say, we can listen to, oh, is it frozen? No. He would say, we can listen to everything here, but I'm not lending anything out. If you want anything, you bring me a tape and I'll do it for you. And I was like, okay. But he would give us mixtapes, which was nice. Okay. So he gave me a mixtape with like Portishead and The Prodigy and My Bloody Valentine. And when I heard and Ride. And when I heard Ride, I was like, oh my God, this is what this is what I was looking for. I remember it was Polar Bear.
Oh, fantastic. That is good stuff. Now, probably 1984, 1985, I was at my friend's house and his brother was playing the drums to a Simple Minds track. And I thought, oh my God, I love this big booming kick bass. So I took up the drums, not very seriously. But for you, what was the inspiration for learning how to play music?
Well, I think it was actually, I was home and I was listening to Bon Jovi, and my mom happened to be around, and she looked at me and said, well, if you like this kind of thing, why don't you have guitar lessons? Yeah. And I was like, well, I don't know. And she was like, well, your auntie's got an old guitar. She could probably lend it to you. So, and she said, I'll pay for your guitar lessons. And I was like, okay. So in France, you can go to like the equivalent of like the YMCA or something like that, and they'll do lessons for cheap, Yeah. So I think I did that for about a year, and that was enough to know how to get on with it, because at that point Nirvana had happened.
Right.
And, so you could actually make music that was incredibly simple, but good. And I think very quickly I realized that I wasn't much of a guitarist, but it was a means to an end. And the end has always been to me to write songs.
I don't want to forget about something I learned about you in my research. You are a pretty big fan of the Pumpkins, yeah?
Massive fan. Favorite band.
Okay, yeah. So we have Bon Jovi, we have Nirvana, Teenage Fan Club. But what is it about the Pumpkins that you really, really just admire?
It's everything. It's so the first thing I heard was on the single soundtrack. The last song was Starlight, isn't it? It's Drown. So the first thing I heard was Drown, and it was like nothing. It was like nothing on the rest of the songs. It was completely different. It was the sound, it was the fact that they were able to be dreamy but heavy at the same time, and it's nothing I'd ever had before. Like you could be heavy. I listened to Pantera. It was heavy, but it wasn't dreamy. There wasn't melodies, and the Pumpkins, they had melodies. They had that dreaminess aspect to it. Their guitar solos were like nothing else. The tone of it. And then, once I listened to Drown, I was like, I must find other things. And the first thing I found was Siamese Dream.
Oh, Siamese Dream. Yeah.
And it was just like, wow, like this is it. From the first note to the last note, it's just perfection.
I think you're the third or fourth person that has cited the Pumpkins as a major influence on their life. It's fascinating to me. Sometimes I get The Cure, The Beatles, Ride or Slow Dive, something like that. So it's interesting to see how the Pumpkins continue to show up in artists, musicians' lives. So real quickly,
I think I was saying I think the reason behind it is, even though they were actually really popular, they were big.
Yeah.
They were the outcast. Even they were the outcasts within the outcasts, like, when Nirvana happened, Nirvana were the outcasts, and then all that kind of like that scene, was kind of like, oh, they're different people, but the Pumpkins were different from them as well. And I think that appealed to people, but I think the music as well was so much more ambitious than anyone else. And if there's one thing I cannot stand, is the lack of ambition in music.
Mm. Tell me more about that. I'm very curious.
So, how people say like punk rock is like incredibly important and stuff like that. I agree with it. It's important in terms of what it enabled people to do. But I think musically it's absolute dross. I will, obviously there's exceptions. I like the Sex Pistols because basically they're pop songs.
Yeah.
I like the Dead Kennedys because they're weird.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, it doesn't really speak to me. It doesn't work. Whereas, so I think I like bands who try to move forward. And I think in moving forward, there's lucky accidents and also terrible mistakes. But is it better than stagnating? I would say yes.
Ooh, I've got a question for you then.
Okay.
How in the world are you like Billy Corgan in any manner?
I don't know if I'm similar to him in any way, shape, or form, to be honest, but I've listened to a lot of interviews of Billy Corgan, and he has this really weird thing of saying things just to question things. And he doesn't necessarily agree with what he's saying. It's more like, what if we asked the question about this?
Yeah.
What will come out? And that brings a lot of negative headlines saying, well, Billy Corgan said this. Well, yeah, but he didn't really say it in that sense. He kind of, asked the question out loud. Now, I don't know, maybe he's a terrible human being. I have no idea, but I like the way he thinks in terms of trying, asking questions. Playing devil's advocate sometimes. I think it's an important thing to do. You ask the questions, don't necessarily have the answer, but you can ask the questions and make people think.
And that goes all the way back to what you said at the beginning of this conversation, the why. He seems to want to know, he wants to get into the why underneath the surface, through the weeds. I see the similarities right there.
I do, thank you. You have you ever worked as a life coach?
No, I was an elementary school teacher.
Well, you're asking the right questions to be a life coach. What was I going to say about that? I'll tell you what, in which way I'm similar to Billy Corgan, though. I like wrestling.
You do?
It's not a badge of honor, is it? But I do.
That's okay. Do we want to know why?
There's worse things in life. I don't know. Why do I like wrestling? I don't know. I guess you don't need to engage your brain that much when you watch it.
Okay.
Maybe that's my way of disconnecting. I don't know.
Yeah, possibly. Or I got a movie for you then. It's called The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke.
Oh, I like it. I've seen it. It's good.
Good movie. Okay. We have now arrived at this conversation where I'm going to spin a wheel on my screen and it's going to land on an author.
Okay.
And I'm going to read a short little passage, and I'd love for you to respond in terms of anything to do with Shore Dive Records, Beatastic, whatever you want to share. Okay. So here we go. Let us spin the wheel. Julia Cameron. Okay. This quote comes from a book called The Artist's Way, written by Julia Cameron, A Spiritual Path to Higher Creativity.
I've heard of it, actually.
Yeah, it's a good one. This is from subchapter, if you will. It's called Filling the Well, Stocking the Pond. Art is an image-using system. In order to create, we draw from our inner well. This inner well, an artistic reservoir, is ideally like a well-stocked trout pond. We've got big fish, little fish, fat fish, skinny fish, an abundance of artistic fish to fry. As artists, we must realize that we have to maintain this artistic ecosystem. If we don't give some attention to upkeep, our well is apt to become depleted, stagnant, or blocked. So, Nico, how do you allow yourself from those things not happening? How do you stock the pond?
Well, it's actually happened.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. This month I released the last Beatastic album, and I've decided it's my last one.
In connection to what Julia says in her book, how do you know that's the last time you're going to stock that pond?
I think I have. So once again, in terms of, if we're talking in terms of ambition, right?
Yes.
This project, I've been doing it since 2008, and it's changed a lot throughout the times. And I got to the point where I don't know which way to, like, there isn't a new fish. Do you see what I mean? I've gone through all the species of fishes that it can be, and I have no more fishes. I need to start looking into snails or something.
So you've arrived at this decision. How did that decision feel? Liberating?
In a way, because I think if this is really interesting, because if you think in terms of creation, and you're creating something, you will have your favorites, and then other people will have their favorites of what things that you've done, and that tend to not match. And it's hard to understand why it doesn't match, because for me, it's just like, well, this is clearly the best one. And so I think it's hard to understand from that point of view, but also there comes a point where you feel like you can't move things further.
Okay.
Right. And at that point, it's kind of like, well, what do you do? Do you just keep going, but then it's just rehashing the same, but less good? Or if you're lucky, as good, but rehashing the same? Or is it moving on and trying to do something different? And, I've done many different projects, so it's starting a new one is not particularly scary.
Okay.
It's just putting a different name on it and hopefully having a different flavor to it. Otherwise, it's pointless, and I might as well just call it the same thing.
Right. I love that answer. Let's spin the wheel again, shall we?
Yes. Do you have a name for this?
Well, I used to call it spin the Rick Rubin wheel.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I've been adding different authors. There we go. Rick Rubin. Okay. Have you read this book called The Creative Act, The Way of Being?
No.
Are you familiar with Rick Rubin?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. So this comes from the chapter Momentum. This is what he says. Crafting contains a paradox. To create our best work, we are patient and avoid rushing the process, while at the same time we work quickly without delay. By remaining too long in this phase, many pitfalls may arise. One is disconnection. If an artist is calling a beautiful work and keeps endlessly crafting it beyond the need, sometimes they want to start all over. This can be because they have changed or the times have changed. Art is a reflection of the artist's inner and outer world during the period of creation. Do you feel that sense of paradox as an artist, as a musician?
No, because I don't really agree with it, in the sense that I think, like things Keith Richards says, you don't write songs, you catch them. I believe that, right?
Okay.
And some people write songs. Leonard Cohen writes songs. Leonard Cohen spends 10 years writing the lyrics to Hallelujah because there's 17 verses. But is it better than within the first month? Probably not. I mean, the words are better, but the melody isn't, which brings me to one of my favorite topics, actually. So growing up in France, you get exposed to a lot of French music, right?
Yeah.
And I've never been massively into French music. And I watched this documentary that was really good, explaining the difference between Anglo-Saxon music and French music. And it's saying French music is some great words with hopefully a nice melody. English music is some nice melody with hopefully some good words, right? And I totally agree with that, but I'm not a words person. So once again, if you grow up in a country where you hear music on a radio and that music is in a foreign language, you don't understand what they're saying. So words are completely irrelevant to music, right? I don't believe they are completely irrelevant, but they're not the main thing for me anyway. So when I was 4 years old, my mum said that we used to run around the house singing Barbara Ann by the Beach Boys, right? But I don't know what the words were, so I was just going ba ba ba, and that was good. And if I knew what the words were, it wouldn't have made any blind bit of difference to me, because that's not what it's about. It's about the ba ba ba. It's about a melody.
The melody, yes.
Yeah. So
I've heard that
so
time and time again. Yeah, I've heard that. Sorry, time and time again from artists and musicians. It is all about the melody.
No, but it's not always true. I mean, if you're going to listen to the Smiths, if you don't get the words, you're missing on so much.
Yeah, right.
And that would be a terrible mistake. If you listen to Nick Cave, it would be good to understand the words, because they're a big part of it. So, but what's the difference between a good Nick Cave song and a bad Nick Cave song? It's probably a good melody.
Right.
So,
right. Okay, well, let's continue with this, because I'm very fascinated by your answers. So within the same chapter, he goes on to say, the danger of living with an unfinished project for too long is that the more often an artist is exposed to a particular draft of a work, the more final that form can become in their mind. A musician might record a demo of a song very quickly. They could listen to it 1,000 times and imagine developing it to all it can be. Yet, when it comes time to actually make the best version of the song, the demo may be so ingrained in their head that any changes to it may seem blasphemous.
absolutely. Yeah.
You feel you subscribe to that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it needs to be done as quick as possible. I'll be honest with you, the way I write songs, between the time I sit down with absolutely nothing, right, and the time that the song is written, recorded, mixed and mastered, there's about 3 hours.
Really?
Yeah. I have never gone any longer than that, ever.
So you and Stanley Kubrick would not get along?
No, I can't. Some people say music is craft, but I don't agree with that. I agree. Okay, so that goes back to the well, actually. So the craft goes into the well, right?
Yes.
So if you don't keep chipping at it as often as possible, it goes dry.
Sure.
Okay. And I think that's been my problem recently. I used to be in a situation where the only time I would be able to record music would be on a Sunday afternoon for a couple of hours. Right? I have never been as productive in my life as during that period.
Interesting.
Because my time was very limited. It was then or never. Right?
Yes.
And now that I have more time and I can record pretty much any time I want, I don't do it.
Wow. I like what you said, chipping away. And in fact, I believe Nick Cave does that every day. Yeah. He just sits at the piano
He goes to the office. He holds office hours. He does 9 to 5 every day. And he actually has an office in town, in Hove. And he goes there from his house, sits down and does everything he needs to do during the day. At 5 o'clock, it's like, goodbye, everyone. And he's gone.
That's such discipline, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's why he's able to do, I mean, that, what was not the last album, but the one before? Ghosteen,
yes.
Oh my God. This is probably the best thing he's ever done.
Yeah.
And he has no right to do something that good at age like 67 or whatever he is. So the only way that is possible is if he keeps the kind of like floodgates open. And I think he does by chipping at it every day.
And I wonder how much that was fueled and inspired by the loss of his son.
Possibly. But I think he's been holding off his hours for a very long time.
Can we listen to a song of yours?
Sure.
Okay. And I'd love to get your analysis. This is called, let's do Clark Kent, Not Superman. Yeah? By Beatastic. Let's take a listen. All right, Nico, give us a little background to this song that came out, wow, God, 10 years ago?
Yeah. I think the idea was I wanted it to sound a little bit like the Pixies.
Ah, okay. Yeah,
So there's like a big sort of like guitar, like held note at the start that kind of, I think that's from the Pixies. I don't know. I can tell you what the general thing is though, which is I will always, well, not always, I would 99% of the time, I will try to get some kind of groove in it. And the reason for that is, like, if you listen to a lot of shoegaze, it's quite static. It doesn't do much in terms of rhythm. You know, there's some chord movement and there's things like that. But in terms of groove, there isn't a groove. There's not, you know. So obviously there's exceptions. You know, My Bloody Valentine will have a groove often. But Slow Dive doesn't, and I've never been a Slow Dive fan. And yeah, so I always try to have some kind of groove to it. And I guess that's, if you wanted to have a look at what my thing is that I do shoegaze with a groove, I guess.
Yeah. Well, this song, the reason why I picked is, I mean, it's big, it's bombastic, it's loud. And then there's that quiet that kind of just like stills the song a bit. And then you're like, okay, we're back in. It does have that Pixies Pumpkins feel to it.
Pumpkins feel, yeah, that's the Pumpkins, you know. But I think, yeah, I'm a big fan of layers.
Yes.
Dave Navarro from Jane's Addiction, when he records his guitar parts, he records as many guitar parts as possible, and then he chips away at them until he finds the right combination of this and that. But there's never like one guitar on a Jane's Addiction song. There's always like 15. And I'm very much like that. I like to pack things up with layers and eventually decide which ones are going to stay or not.
I'm going to quote you here. Music is simple. It's Lego, brick by brick. Writing a song takes 2 hours. The best teacher is Robert Smith. Listen to how things are built layer after layer. Yeah?
Absolutely. If you listen to a Cure song, I think a perfect example of that is the last song on Disintegration. I forgot what it's called now.
Untitled.
Yes. It starts with one, like, it's not harmony. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And it builds, and then it adds another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. And suddenly you're like, oh my God, this is gorgeous. And it's the Lego approach, you know?
Okay. Can I push back on that Lego approach?
Yeah.
So here's what I've heard from other musicians. sometimes that Lego approach is too much. Less is more. Yeah?
Yeah. No.
Okay.
Not for me. More
Not
is more.
for you.
No,
You're just
more is
like,
more.
let's just throw everything on the wall and let's see what sticks.
Yeah. Now, obviously, at some point, it is too much.
Yes.
Let's face it, at some point, it is too much. But more is more. That's why it's called more, because it's more. So, yeah, I don't buy to the less is more. Unless it's for a purpose.
Okay.
So, for example, if you have a song where there's tons of things going on, at some point you drop down to one simple thing, then less is less, because you're going from one extreme to the other. So,
right.
Yes, less is more in that sense, but only in context.
Okay. So you've cited the Pumpkins, you've cited the Cure. Give me another band that you feel is really qualified. Maybe that's not the right word. Really good at adding more and more, and it doesn't sound like an amazing mess.
Good question.
Well, you mentioned Ride, yeah.
Yeah, right are fairly simple. I don't know, maybe Jane's Addiction then. There's a lot going on, but there's also a clear, I don't know, there's a clarity to Jane's Addiction. I think it's because of the vocals. They kind of ride on top of everything. So it feels busy.
Yeah.
But there's that clarity within it.
Yes. I think that's a great example. And I've always found their music, in my opinion, as kind of a controlled chaos kind of thing.
I mean, if you listen to Ritual de l'Habitual, there's, what's it called, that song?
No, Ain't No Right. Is that Ain't No Right?
That's it, Ain't No Right. That's pure chaos, that.
Yeah.
Right? But the voice rides on top of it. And then, and when it starts, there's just a voice, isn't it, pretty much? And there's like maybe a little bit of drums or something. But it's and then it goes crazy, but it rides, and the voice rides above it. And I think that's what's important. Which is weird, because on the other hand, I don't really like heavy metal that's got like really super high pitched vocals.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I've spoken to several people who run record labels, companies, and each one is uniquely different. But I do ask them the same question. So here's my same question for you, Nico. How the hell do you do it? How do you keep that machine running? How do you keep stocking the pond?
Well,
it just must be so exhausting.
It is, but it isn't. I don't know. I think I remember talking to Shauna McLarnon. I don't know if you know her. She's
a PR promoter.
Oh, yes, she is.
Yes.
The name doesn't ring anyway. So we talked online a couple of times, and she came to Brighton with her daughter years ago. So we met and stuff like that. And I remember her saying to me, the difference between you and other people is that you keep chipping at it. So lots of people will start a label, and then within 5 years it's gone, right? But you keep chipping at it, and I do something every single day.
Give us an example. Yeah, give us an example. Give us an example.
So even on the day, if a day I have absolutely zero time to do, I will make sure that I would still like share some social media posts or something like that. Just that, right? Just to let people know that you're still here. I think that the key thing behind my label is I always look an artist as, can I help them, not can they help me? Okay. So I need to be in a position where I can help them, and if I can do that, then their time isn't wasted. If I'm in a position where I'm profiting from their notoriety or something like that, then I'm being dishonest about it.
So what would you tell people who are interested in doing the job that you do? What advice would you give them? Keep chipping away.
Keep chipping away. I think that's the most. That's the foundation. Be honest. Be clear in your expectations. Have what do you call it? Boundaries.
What do you mean by
Boundaries?
Yeah, I want to know.
So some people have been saying things like, would you do this and that? And my answer is no. And they say, come on then. And I'm just like, no. Okay, if I say no, it's no. So I need to have, in order to be able to it's the life jacket theory, right? You're in a plane. The plane is about to crash. The life jacket comes down, and they always tell you the life jacket is for you. Don't give the life jacket to anyone. And the reason is that if you can't function, then you're a burden. You're not any help, right? So I need to make sure that I can function. So that's why it's important for me to have boundaries in terms of what I can do and can't do. And if I was to get into like letting people trample over my boundaries, then I wouldn't be able to function, and therefore I wouldn't be able to do a good job for the people I work for or with.
One of your favorite questions is why? So why did you get into this part of the music business?
That's actually a horrible story. I started this project called Syriza, and on the Facebook groups on Facebook, I met this guy who seemed to be incredibly well connected, and he sort of seemed to know everyone, and he started to. He was going to start a little label, and he said, "Well, would you like me to release your stuff?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." And he was nice, but then like sometimes he'd be very easy to get to, and sometimes he would disappear for like a period of time, and you couldn't contact him. It was a bit odd, and I ended up. It's a very long story, so just to make things simpler, I ended up finding out that he was on parole for possession of child porn.
Oh,
yes, and so obviously one of the conditions of his parole was to not be on the internet. And clearly he was. And obviously the question is, well, it's not like I'm earning millions, but what is he doing with that money?
Right.
Is he using it to, towards buying child porn or something like that? I have no idea. So it turned out to be legit. It wasn't like a lie. He was a criminal. So me and a couple of other people ended up reporting him. And within to the police, and I think he was a lot. We ended up reporting him, and within a day, all his accounts were closed and he was gone.
Oh my goodness!
So I'm guessing he got locked up. But so the question is, well, how can I not find myself in that situation ever again? Well, be your own boss.
What a story!
Yeah, not nice.
So you keep this pond stocked, if you will. People come to you and say, "Hey, Nico," they'll email you, they'll message you, "Hey, check this out." Do you have like a criteria?
I have to like it.
Yeah. Is it just totally by the ear?
Yeah, I have to like it. Well, yeah, no, there is criteria. So I have to like it. That's number one. Number two, I have to be in a position where I can help them, not take advantage of them.
Right.
And number three, it has to sort of fit within the label. Now, because I'm a fan of the Pumpkins, what fits within the label means is quite broad. Like if you listen to the Pumpkins, it's not shoegaze, but there's a shoegaze element influence to it.
Yep.
I've been toying with the idea for a very long time to start a podcast that probably will never happen because I just don't have time. Called Shoegaze is a Flavor, and basically talk to people about any kind of music, but how has shoegaze influenced you, or even though you might be doing something different, is there anything from shoegaze that you've taken into your music, that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon at the moment.
Is that just because of time? That's it?
Yeah, I just don't have the time.
God, you would be so good at this.
Yeah, but too long now. I don't have that time. At some point.
Right.
Maybe. If I can be bothered. I don't know.
Does a gentleman by the name of Greg Peters come to mind?
Yeah, I know him.
Tell me about him.
So, well, he has a radio show on Drum Buzz Radio, same as me. And he's in Australia, and he reached out to me a while ago saying, would you like to release a compilation of Australian bands that have played within the area that he lives in? I think it's Brisbane, but I'm not sure. Anyway, and I was like, yeah, I can do that. But I was like, I tell you what we should do. We should do it and release it for free. But then if people want to pay more, which you can do on Bandcamp, they can donate money, and we need to find like a charity that the money would go to. So he found this charity in Australia called Support Act, which is for musicians or music people basically who found themselves in a situation where they can't work because of injuries or things like that. So we've done that. We raised about almost $1,000 Australian dollars.
Yeah.
So no, sorry, US dollars. Yeah.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah.
Really nice guy. I've interviewed several of the people that records in your record company. Matt Catling from Under the Sun.
Yeah, I know him.
And Phantom Wave.
Yep. Yeah, we worked with both of them.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm just going to read some of the lists here of artists, names, musicians, bands to the listeners here. And you can check this out, shorediverecords.bandcamp.com. All sorts of goodies here. So you have Under the Sun, Hey Calamity, Tears on Demand, of course, Beatastic. What's another one here?
Tears on Demand is me.
Pluto is a Planet.
That's not me, but yeah.
That's not you. Yeah. Flu. Man, you've got some great work, great artists here. So real quickly, Nico, give us kind of a real insider look at how do you run this thing?
Well, like I said, I think you have to have rules and boundaries and things like that. And then after that, it's just about chipping away at it. In terms of, I always try to do something like, what's my next step?
Okay.
And so the next step at the moment has been to sponsor some gigs and festivals.
Nice.
Yeah. So we've just done Ceremony East Coast, Tremors, and Ghost Patterns in Brighton. We're doing a festival in Leeds.
Okay.
And we're sponsoring a Tremolo festival in Seattle.
And that's the one with waves crashing.
Yeah.
Great band.
Great band.
A
really good live though.
I've yet to see him. I think I bothered Josh to come on out to the Bay Area. I want to see him.
No, they're really good band.
So putting on a festival, oh my goodness, major undertaking?
No, because this is it. So basically the Tremolo Festival is organized by the Tremolo Festival. So they're doing what they do, right?
Right.
What we're offering is I come with White Light, White Heat, which is a fantastic music blog based in Italy, and Drum Buzz Radio, which is based in California. Yeah. So the three of us together, we're basically sponsoring the festival. But what we do is we basically just help spread the word. And so, we've put on a few radio shows playing the bands from the festival. The blog will interview some bands from the festival as well as the organizers. We do social media posts and things like that. So it's about helping. And in exchange for that, we basically get our little logos on a poster. So I think it helps everyone.
Right.
No one's losing out from it.
Okay.
And I think it's a win-win situation.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention A Deeper Heaven, Mark Wheeler's band.
Good band, really good band. Well, it looks like we're going to do our next EP, so that's good.
Nice. Is there anything else you want to share with the listeners about running a record label? Anything you feel like you missed?
It's not that complicated if you have a go.
Are you running this by yourself?
I am, yeah.
Do you have any support, or is it just you?
Not really, no. It's just,
Yes. All right.
I don't know. It's like everything else. You think it's difficult and then you try it and you're like, okay, I could do this. And then the more you do it, the more comfortable you become with it and stuff like that. But obviously the problem is, the danger is stagnating, isn't it? So
Yeah.
if you kind of like, I can do this, so you don't put any efforts in it, then it doesn't go anywhere. You need to put some efforts into it. You need to keep chipping at it. You need to keep working. So this is where the craft comes in. I don't think the craft comes into music in that sense. Music is, for me, is more inspiration. The label's craft.
So what's coming down the line for this label in 2025 or anything else you want to share?
Well, I think I would like to maybe streamline a little bit more. So at the moment we do 2 to 3 releases a month. I'm wondering if I should try to streamline a bit more and do maybe 1 or 2. I don't know. I haven't quite decided yet.
Mm.
I think we're going to try keep sponsoring gigs and festivals, because I think that's a no-brainer.
Yep.
It just helps everyone. Why would you not want to help people? And that's about it, I think.
Okay. Got it. Hey, do you mind if I ask you some trivia questions?
Go for it. You might not get a very good answer, but it's worth a shot.
Speaking of Nick Cave, who's one of my favorite musicians, he wrote a novel, and I'm going to read you the choices. Which novel did he write? The Good Son, Tender Prey, The Firstborn is Dead, and The Ass Saw the Angel.
The Ass Saw the Angel.
That is correct. Ding, 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 ding. Here we go. Next question. Being a Pumpkins fan, we know that Billy Corgan, James Iha worked together, continue to work together, yeah? Do you know where they struck up their friendship?
No, I know Chicago, but I don't know. No, I don't know that, actually.
In a record store.
Oh, well, there you go.
There you go.
Not very surprising, is it?
No, it's not. All right. One more question. Tell us the name of a musician, a band who live or are from Brighton.
Metronomy?
Oh,
I don't know them. Yeah, Metronomy are from Brighton.
great.
There must be others. Oh, yes. Well, technically not from Brighton, but close enough. The Cooks?
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're from like half an hour outside Brighton.
Before we close this conversation out, Nico, could you recommend any albums, podcasts, TV shows, movies to the listeners?
So if you're gonna, I think you should listen to Waterville.
Okay.
On Shore Dive Records. It's really good. There's 2 EPs. It's one of those bands that's like, if it was, if I got a call from them saying we've signed to a major label, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, they're that good. They're really excellent. So my favorite podcast, and be ready for this. This is not a Giovanna. My favorite podcast is Insight with Chris Van Vliet, which is a wrestling podcast.
Nice.
Basically. And he interviews wrestlers, but it's kind of it's done a bit like yours, which is he's trying to understand why and how they got to where they are, as opposed to, what are you doing next month, and that kind of stuff. It's more like, why, how did you? Because if anybody who's made it into any kind of business or where you have to put a lot of work into it, you have to be a certain person to get to that place, right? So it's more like, what makes them tick, what made them want to do this, and what made them work at it to the point that, so it's more about insight than wrestling as such, I guess, in that sense.
I often told my students, if you can answer the why of life, you're going to get so far as just kind of the richness of it all.
Do you have an answer?
Can I read you one more quote? But this time, we're not going to talk about it.
Okay.
Again, this comes from The Creative Active Way of Being by Rick Rubin. Artists occasionally experience a sense of stagnation, a block, This isn't because the flow of creativity has stopped. It can't. This generative energy is ceaseless. It may just be that we are choosing not to engage with it. Think of an artistic impasse as another type of creation, a block of your own making, a decision, conscious or unconscious, not to participate in the stream of productive energy that is available to us at all times. Nico, thank you for this very illuminating conversation. Your articulation. Oh, you're welcome. Your articulations with these answers gives me something to ponder and think about, which is why I love doing these podcasts. I wish you nothing but continued success. And success to me, what I understand about you, it's not about the cash flow.
No.
Helping people.
It's a life of service, isn't it?
Yes.
And we talked about the why. I think the why is that we are on this planet to help others.
Yeah, and that could be a whole nother conversation. In order to help others, we've got to be here, right?
Absolutely.
My name is W, also known as William, host of the High Art on the Edge page, host of this podcast feature called Surprise Cast. And remember, everyone, great music is all around us. You just have to keep your ears open. Ciao.